Alright, what's going up, guys? Or what's going up? Alright, what's going on, guys? This is episode 4, I believe, on Thunder's Goon Camp. Today, we're going to be going over the concepts of fair value gaps and inverse fair value gaps. So, fair value gaps slash inverse fair value gaps, or better known as FVGs slash IFVGs. Okay? So, in our previous video, we talked about how highs and lows, right? So, highs and lows, so when we create a high, these areas are targets for where price wants to go, right? We want to hit that high, and then when we create a low, we'll come on down later and take out that low as well. We talked about that, right? How these areas are where price wants to, or price is attracted to. It's almost like a magnet. Now we'll be talking about another concept called fair value gaps. So a fair value gap is formed with a candle. Yeah, let's do this. So you get a candle with a wick, right? And then a body such like that, and then another candle with a wick. So basically, what a fair value gap is lack of liquidity in the market. So I'll just show you guys an example here. So basically, when we have high liquidity or high volatility in the market, we have a lot of buys and sells contradicting each other, right? But in some certain moments, we will get a lack of liquidity. So boom, here we get a lack of liquidity forming this huge body candle, right? And we take it from wick to wick. So anywhere from inside that wick to inside this wick, that is our fair value gap area. I'll just mark that out for you guys. And basically what's really cool about these fair value gaps is that price will trade back into them before continuing down on a, this should be bearish. Hold on. Let me just edit this color. All right. So price will trade into these before going down, and price will trade into these before going up. So let me just show. Am I stupid? What? Okay, so basically a bullish fair value gap is what we have here. So the idea is that price will come up into it and then pull back down because it's attracted to this area where there's a lack of liquidity and we get that fat move on. So down here too, price would basically come on down to here and then go back up. And I'll just show this on the charts here. It's really fucking simple. What do we have here? We have a downtrend going on down, and then we create this fat fair value gap. What do we do? We come back up, fill it up before we continue to push on down, and it looks like, yeah, we're going to continue to push on down there. So yeah, that is literally what a fair value gap is. So this would be a bullish fair value gap because we come on up into it and push on down. And then I'll show you guys, or that's a bearish fair value gap. And then a bullish fair value gap would be like this during, what's it called? Yeah, right here, during London session. What happens is that we come on down into this fair value gap, like right here. Then we push on up. So there's 3 rules for a fair value gap to be respected, right? First rule is no overlapping candles. So basically what I mean by overlapping candles is that there are no overlapping candles, is that there's no candles. Like, what would be not a fair value gap here? Like this would not be a fair value gap because the candle is overlapping and it's inside of it. What a true fair value gap is when you have space. It's a 3 candle pattern, right? We have 3 candles and we have space between the first wick and the outside wick. So that both the outside wicks, we have space in that area where we have the body filled. So right there, we just have area for that body to retrace back into. And then second is that for a proper fair value gap is, this is a second rule, is that you do not get body closure out of it. And then the third would be, what would be the third? I guess there's not a third rule, but so this is your fair value gap rules. So there's no overlapping candles, right? And we don't get a body closure out of it. And what I mean by that is that we don't see how we have this fair value gap here that gets created. Right here, we respected it. However, we later come on down, and what do? We close below it with the body sticking through. If a wick pokes through, right, that's all right. That doesn't count as a closure because there's still potential for us to go back up. But as soon as we get that body to close down there, what we get is a inverse fair value gap. All right. So yeah, let me show you guys what an inverse fair value gap is on here. An inverse fair value gap is showing just a complete, oh shit, I'm fucking all this shit up. An inverse fair value gap is showing that market is rejecting the direction we push down towards, and we're going in the opposite area. So here, this is our bullish fair value gap, right? And instead of coming into it, oh shit, instead of coming into it and pulling back down, we are going straight up, and we close right out of it. So instead of getting a little candle like that, right, like we get a little pokage out and then we come on down, instead of that, we just get a big fucking candle closing out of it, creating an inverse fair value gap because we closed out of this acceptable range right here. This range was what we're trying to close into, and we just don't. And as soon as we do that, that gives us the opposite bias, right? So since we tapped into this 15-minute bullish fair value gap, we're expecting it to pull higher, right? But as soon as we close below it, that's how we know our bias has switched, and now we're going bearish. So the same thing could apply to the downside as well. I'll just show an example here, right? We're going down so far, but then boom, what happens? This candle closes way above right here, okay, causing an inverse fair value gap, switching our bias from bearish to bullish, right? So literally in the example I shown here, so this is a bearish. These drawings are really bad, but you know, bear with me here. So this would be a inverse of a bearish candle. So basically, yeah, this would show bullish projection. So the only rule you need here, the only rule, IFG rule, one, you just literally need a body closure to disrupt the fair value gap. That's literally all there is to this. And then I'll give you guys the example for right here as well. So instead of getting that, this is the area we're trying to close in through. So instead of coming back down into it and bouncing up, we're just closing straight down, right? Closing straight into it. This is the inverse of a bullish fair value gap. I don't know why I wrote candle. It should be fair value gap. Okay, and then right, this shows bearish projection. So literally, right, what do we talk about? These areas, these unfilled fair value gaps, right, where we get wick structure, fat body, wick structure, fat body, wick structure, are areas where price wants to come back into because there's a lack of volatility or because there's a lack of liquidity. So we are inevitable to come back up. And once we come back up, we either dump down out of it or we go back and we go and inverse it and go in the opposite direction. And that's why these are so powerful. And the rule about these is that, okay, you guys are just going to write this down from what I'm saying. There's always going to be bigger fair value gap within a small fair value gap. And the rule is that you want to play off of the biggest fair value gap you see here. Because right here, the 15, you see how the 15 gets inversed, right? Our 15-minute fair value gap gets inversed. But however, you go look on our 4-hour, and dude, we haven't even formed our 4-hour candle yet. But this, just because we inverse this 15-minute, right, this little range, or we didn't even, like right here, right, just because we inverse it doesn't mean that we're necessarily going to carry on up, because we're going to follow the projection of the biggest fair value gap in that accumulated order, or in that accumulated area. So just because we have 15-minute gaps here doesn't mean they're necessarily hold through, as we have a bigger 4-hour gap here. I actually lost a trade on this last Monday, I believe. Let me see if I could just find it right. Where would it have been? Right here, right? So on Tuesday, last Tuesday, we get it inverse on the 5-minute. So I enter on long on the 5-minute, right? But however, what I failed to realize, so I had my order like right here. What I failed to realize was that the 5-minute wasn't the biggest fair value gap in that area, because it was actually part of a bigger 15-minute right there. And boom, we don't get that closure until like 40 minutes later. So yeah, even though I had the right idea, I lost because I didn't pay attention to the proper, the proper arrangements of the fair value gap in that area. So remember that bigger fair value gap always plays bigger role. Bigger fair value gap always plays bigger role. Always remember that. And what else? Always wait for the body to close within for fair value gaps, and always wait for the body to close out of fair value gaps for inverse fair value gaps. So what I basically mean by this is that right here, because on that let's say there's a 5-minute, right, and we inverse this on the 3-minute, and we already inversed it we still have 2 minutes within our 5-minute candle range to come wick down and come on back down. So what you want to wait is for the 5-minute time frame to finish and close out of this gap. That's basically it. Also, this is kind of a rushed explanation, as I have class in 9 minutes, so I do recommend watching a separate video if you're getting lost on what I'm saying. But basically the idea is that these gaps on the bigger time frame too, like you could just see, like, we draw into them, we always come back into them, and we always disrespect it and deliver out, or respect it and come on down and use it as support. You can see here on this big 4-hour, we come back up, and then we come on, or we push back into it, and then we push back out. And that's literally what fair value gaps are. Basically, they're just similar to liquidity sweeps. There's just draws where price wants to go towards. There's the rules for prices. There's one rule for prices, I guess. Price is always going towards external liquidity, so highs and lows, or going into internal liquidities, that's internal highs, internal lows, and fair value gaps. And yeah, you can kind of just see here, right? Like, we kind of come on back down, draw into this 4-hour fair value gap before we push on up. And yeah, really just grasp a good aspect on how these works. These are inverse fair value gaps, right? So these are my why isn't this shit working? IFVGs. These are the inverse fair value gaps, and these are my normal fair value gaps. Okay. Fair value gaps, and then these are So yeah, basically that's it for today's video. There's nothing really to say. These are inverse fair value gaps. We close out of the body, going in the opposite direction. And these are proper fair value gaps where we trace back into the body and push back out. Trace back in, push back out, trace back in, push back out. That's literally basically it. Rewatch this video if you need help, and go look on TikTok or look on YouTube for examples and other explanations if you find this video a little whack. But yeah, that's about it.